him! Huzzah! Several voices cried almost together as Lewrie alit on the street cobbles and tried to shrug into the deep folds of his heavy wool boat-cloak, and clapped on his cocked hat. "St. Alan the Liberator himself!" Christ! I wish they'd lose that un, Lewrie thought, wincing as his father jostled him as he got out behind him. "Black Alan!" was hooted from others. "Three cheers! Huzzah!" Hell's bells, that un's not a whit better, he thought. "Smile, damn ye!" his father cautioned in a harsh whisper right near his ear. "Confidence, huh? Show for the damned mob, what? As your barrister said?" Sir Hugo prompted. Lewrie forced himself to smile, took off his hat, and transferred it to his left hand, to leave his right one free, to fend off the pickpockets if for nothing else. The last time he'd appeared before the King's Bench, the summer before, one particularly skilled young lady of the lifting lay, as his notorious old school friend Clotworthy Chute called it, had made off with his watch and fob and leather coin-purse right as he'd threaded his way through throngs of well-wishers after his case had been held over for review. So it was understandable he kept his top-lights skinned for the charming three-handed Jenny. Thursday, the 8th of January, and bloody damned early in the morning to boot, was a hellish cold day for London. Had Lewrie his druthers, he'd have worn 2 boat-cloaks and a carriage blanket round his knees, but his impending trial had become a 9-day wonder. No thanks to the many tracts, cartoon prints, and bought newspaper articles put out by the Reverend William Wilberforce's Society for the Abolition of Slavery in the British Empire the last year, entire. So Lewrie could hardly disguise himself any longer, nor could he swaddle himself against the weather either. Reluctantly, he flung back the boat-cloak to reveal his gilt-laced uniform coat, and the 100-guinea presentation sword given him by the East India Company after a sea-fight against a French frigate in the South Atlantic that saved a small convoy of John Company ships returning from India in 1799. And, despite his wariness of pickpockets and eyes darting for signs of three-handed Jenny, Lewrie was thronged by gentlemen and ladies wishing to take hands with him, by people fluttering portrait prints of the artist Acosta's charcoal life-sketch, now available from Mr. Bryden's shop in Charing Cross, for him to sign with pencil in the margins. "You'd think I'm Nelson, fresh from the Battle of the Nile, not a slave crimper," Lewrie ruefully told himself, and wondering if he'd attract the same sort of acclaim should he be found guilty and carted off to the gallows a few days hence. And would he have to put on the same confident and affable show to go game as a convicted highwayman? "God bless you, sir. Good on you. Might you do me the honour of inscribing? Best of luck to you this day, sir. Me son served with you in the old Jester sloop, Captain, and—" "The devil take those horrid bowmans, and God uphold the right I say, Captain Lewrie," came from dozens as he slowly made his way up the broad steps to the welcoming doors, now standing wide open despite the cold, and visibly blasting waves of warmth from the interior. Calls for "Abolition of slavery throughout the British Empire now!" were followed by "Here, who's that git?" with the faint cry of "Thief! Thief!" from the edge of the crowd, out by piles of shuffled-away snow, now gone grey from coal-smoke grit and frozen half to ice. Thankfully it was not directed at Lewrie, but at some clumsy pickpocket who was sprinting away as fast as his legs could carry him, with or without the object of his craft, pursued by a clutch of men. Oh, there were some stout and prosperous-looking men, heavily and expensively overcoated against the chill, who stood far back at the edges of the crowd, round to either side of the top of the steps, who glowered at him. Men engaged in the sugar trade, which utterly depended on slave labour for their crops. Men in the tobacco, rice, rum, and cotton imports, and men in the West Indies and American shipping businesses, which maintained the infamous triangle trade of British gewgaws to Africa, slaves in exchange to the Americas and West Indies, then raw goods back to Great Britain. Any threat to slave economies would mean utter ruin to their fortunes. Sadly, among those silently jeering men were several senior officers of his own service, most like muttering, "That bloody bastard Lewrie." There were more than a few who'd formed that opinion of him during his 20-year naval career. Closer, too, though, was a shivering clutch of St. Giles blackbirds, negro sailors off merchant ships docked or frozen in the pool of